Hello, everybody. This is the 26th, I think, or is it the 27th? I've lost track now. 26th. Thank you. Wi-Fi chat. That's Wise Mind Fireside Chats. Usual kind of gang, joined for the first time by our friend Cosmina Loljani, who's bringing in native Romanian wisdom all the way from Yesh, I think the place is called. We've discussed in the last couple of episodes Thanksgiving. Retrospectively, we talked a little bit about Christmas Eve at Erika and Brett's house, which is definitely something that's on my list for another year. And at this time of year, some people are celebrating something different, which is the solstice and the return of more light, longer days, and the return of life after winter in the Northern Hemisphere. So my question to the group is, how can we embrace life cycles and wisdom to help us grow during periods of change, such as we are now in? Over to you guys.
I think the first thought which jumps into my head is that embracing that life has cycles and there's always change is really important because most people hate change. And when it happens, we're trying to hold on to the status quo, sometimes almost like with dear life. And that can us really lead down a rabbit hole because we cannot stay the same. Our circumstances will never stay the same. Things will just simply change. And I think as quicker we get comfortable with that thought, as easier life gets.
Well, change is the only constant, right? So I find that when the seasons are changing, there is by no real effort on my part, just a natural sort of shift that goes on with me also, right? Like if you're in tune with nature, you sort of shift with nature. And, during the winter, it's hibernation time. It's sort of internal, like, let's get clear on either internally hibernating in the home and taking care of stuff inside the home, or even in a deeper level, internalizing, right? Like, let me go inside a little bit and take a note of what's happening here, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a future episode. It's sort of just one is scaffolding upon the next here, what we're talking about. But it's winter. It's winter. It's time to take inventory of what's going on internally and identify, what's missing, what's working, what's not working, how do I need to shift, what do I need to plant, right? So that I can eventually come springtime bloom, so that I'm shifting with the natural cycles that are going on out there. And when I mean out there, I mean outside in nature. And I just want to say, it's not lost on me that I believe when this episode is going to drop on Christmas Eve. So potentially we have listeners now, viewers, that it's Christmas Eve. So all of what we spoke about in the last two episodes is coming to a head. And now what kind of changes are happening for you heading into this, this eve, this night?
What you said about what are you planting, right? Because it is the winter. So how is it that you shifted or took in the change, right? And what is it that you're planting so that you can grow and bring that forward with you in this next, the spring when that comes? What's the feeling that you're going to have? What's the plan that you're putting out? What's the shift? It's something that's really cool. I really like the picture of planting something, because it doesn't have to be planted in the earth. It could be planted in your mindset. It could be planted in your intentions. It could be something like that. So that's powerful. That's pretty cool. I really like that one.
I think we have come out of being aware of the seasons and the cycles. Some people will still can their fruits and put things up in jars and pickle things and get ready for the cold of winter. And whilst they're using those supplies, they will be thinking about bringing crops on indoors in warmer places. And what we are actually looking for from an internal perspective, for me, is that when that moment of metaphorical spring arrives, we're ready to plant out. We're ready to make the most of all that nature and spring and that flourishing energy brings back to us. That's the wrong time to start thinking about our plans, and that's why, for me, we're kind of out of sync. This period is when we should be thinking about what we do in the next period, where we should actually start thinking about, I resolve to do X, Y, and Z.
I feel that as humans we tend to be very resistant to change, but as Erika was mentioning earlier, and you also touched on, nature is teaching us this lesson actually, that everything changes, and the more in sync we are and aware of the cycles that not just the nature around us goes through, but we, and for example, we women, for example, we are more in tune with the cycles, like we have a monthly cycle as well, and it's more easier maybe for us to tune into that and actually honor our body as it goes through changes literally during a month period. But yeah, like this embracing of change is necessary for that transformation and moving on to the next chapter. And also like during this time, like, and I know that there are many people who are planning or doing like New Year's Eve resolutions and thinking about the next year. But I think before doing that, what I noticed, many people that don't really take time to reflect on the year that passed and what they have learned from it, where they have grown, what are the areas in their life that like they need to look on. So for me, for example, personally, it's something that like I like to make use of this time of reflection and actually reflect on what has gone, what has passed, and the direction that I'm going next. So planting those seeds, as you guys were saying.
I was literally, oh, sorry. I was just before Cosmina was about to speak, thinking to pose, because Brett has a habit and likes to pose questions to our viewers, to get them to engage with themselves. And my question is to each one of us and to anybody out there, this is the time, like Cosmina just said, it's internal, it looks, and the question is, have you changed? It's just a simple question, because nothing happens in stagnant water. That somebody once told us all not too long ago. Nothing grows, nothing happens, nothing good anyway, except for mosquitoes, which we identified, Gabby and I, that mosquitoes grow in stagnant water and they do nothing good. So nothing happens in stagnant water. So the question for me, for all of you, is on this Christmas Eve, asking yourself, have I grown? What has changed for me? How have I changed? Do I want to change? And then take it a step further and decide what you have to do in order for that to happen.
And if we're thinking farming, land, those sorts of ideas, the farmer will have ploughed the fields. They will be fallow at this period, and everything will be at rest, which hopefully is a metaphor for how we are going into this Christmas Eve. Other holidays do exist, but we're going in at a period of rest with all of that potential for growth. And yes, reflection, if we haven't looked at where we grew, we won't know what we did wrong with our planting and our harvesting for this year. So another wise man, in fact, the very same wise man that told us about stagnant water, has also told us about the preparation of the land. And if this period of time in the northern hemisphere, at least, uh, the the shortest days and the longest nights, is not a place of preparation for what will come with the lengthening days, then that's probably the biggest, most obvious indicator of how out of sync we are with the natural rhythms of life.
They're really good points. And what I'm just thinking is, before we even can sit down and reflect and ask us all the questions, are we so out of sync with the cycles that we don't even allow ourselves to have the rest? Because winter is the time of rest. But then, and we just talked about it in the episode last week, how Christmas for many people is completely stressful time because there's so much going on and parties and running around, and then January hits, and January usually in work gets really busy for most people. So do we even allow ourselves to actually sync with the idea of winter period, the rest, to actually be able to sit back and ask us those questions and reflect in the first place? Or are we just so used to running now? Because in the old days we didn't had the lights, so you were almost forced to have the rest because there was no electric lights in the night, so it was dark. You got enough sleep, your body could kind of rest for the springtime when it got busy working, and it was a period of stepping back and taking the rest also for the body. And nowadays this is not actually given anymore. It's go 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 go, driven all the time. So are we completely out of sync in the first place? Or are we allowing ourselves to sit back this time and allow ourselves to actually reflect? Be in sync with the idea of winter and nature.
I think people living in, especially in big cities, are more like out of sync. But you touched on an important point, Gabi, because I feel we get really lost in this energy of doing stuff rather than being. Like we forget about just that this period of rest. And same like in nature, like the trees, they bloom, they give fruit, and then like winter comes, they shed the leaves, everything that needs to be shed, and then basically it's like going into the roots. And when you look from outside, you'll feel like, oh, like it's almost dead, it doesn't have any leaves or anything around it. But actually you can feel it's bursting with life, but it's so connected and it's in the roots, that, and it's just waiting for the right moment to bloom again, like come spring. And like if we understand the cycles as well, like I feel like there is so much gold in it, like allowing ourselves to actually pause, like go back to our roots, who we are being, and then being in that energy of doing again, but replenished. So
We've talked here before about practicing the pause in order to reflect on what's going on and in order to be able to respond from a place of wisdom. And that's literally what nature is giving us. The southern hemisphere is just going into summer. Still, you're reaching that point, the longest point of summer. And here we are being offered that complete hiatus. We have a festival to celebrate it. And for the most part, we decorate, we use light in some way or another. And it's almost like a big flag in the ground saying, practice the pause, look here and see what works. Brett, you were going to speak, my friend.
No, I was just thinking about the bear, how the bear goes and hibernates for the winter season, like fills up, gets his weight on, right? Then goes into this dark cave and hibernates for the winter, right? And that's kind of like the winter season for us. What do we ponder? Like that bear probably goes through his shifts and whatever it is in growth in that darkness, right? Because he's definitely shrinking, right? Because his body's using up all that stored fat and energy and coming out. What's the rebirth? What are you coming out and what are you bringing with you when you finally come back out to that spring? Goes with the whole seed planting, goes with everything. Like nature is really, there's a a whole story there and message if you really tune into what nature's doing, that if we took on as humans, this may be a piece that we lost. Maybe we're not focused on it, as much. But if we did, would it help us and support us in growing to being a better individual? Like those pieces are just something to look at. And I'll leave it at that. Like, how does that sit with you? Like, do you feel that? Does that resonate with you? Um, and what are the things that you're going to let go of in that winter season? And what are you planting? Like, there's so many different pieces. It's just a big piece to this. A big, I don't know, just like you're coming out as this into the spring. Like it's strong. Everything's growing, and so are you. Like, what's that piece that you're bringing out at that time? So, yeah.
I like the symbolism of the bear. So instead of putting on the weight, what weight have you put on during the year? Like new habits which don't help, um, duties which we actually don't need to do, but we feel obliged to do. So what of that weight can we shed which doesn't serve us, slim ourselves down, and what new pounds can we take on which will help us in the next season? Where can we grow our bellies symbolically, which actually helps us forward? I like that.
I have never wanted to be a bear more in my life than I do in this moment. When Brett was describing that, I was like, yes, I want to go into a dark cave and sleep for 3 months. Like, yes, sign me up. Yeah, panda bear, any bear, pandas especially. I have a little soft spot for them. But yeah, I'm all about it. Like really, because nature, if you listen to it, it gives you all the answers, right? Like it's super grounding, it's super healing for not for everybody, maybe, but for me, I connect with that. But I know that I connect with it, but do I give myself enough time with it? No, of course not, because of the hustle, bustle, and of life. But this conversation, very timely, and the end of the year is coming. I'm reflecting on how I can shift in the way that I interact with nature, right? And maybe use nature as model myself around nature and then just follow it and shift, go through my life the way nature goes through its life. And yeah, I'm about to go find myself a cave somewhere and see if I can take a nice little nap, because that symbolism, I actually felt that with every fiber of my being, how awesome that must be to be able to really give yourself permission to rest at will when you need it, and knowing that it's healing. There's healing in that. It's not the connotation with rest is not what everybody in society wants to tell us it is. It's not being lazy, it's not being unproductive. It's super healing and restorative, and I'm all about it. So thank you. This is a fun conversation.
Added to this, and I will make this my own closing thought, is yeah, we see this in nature, but we used to see it in human society. It was not uncommon for people to draw in on the dark days. They would repair their nets or make new ones. They would work through the industry part of what they would be doing for the following season. But yes, they took additional rest because there was no pressure to do otherwise. And that's what we're missing. We are artificially pressured into doing stuff that does not sit well. There's a reason that people get seasonal affective disorder. And one of the reasons is that they're trapped inside for longer than they should be with artificial light instead of going and making whatever use of natural daylight there is, and then resting. So for me, going back to the original question, which is how does it help us during change? Being in tune with nature and with our own physical rhythms, like Cosmina mentioned, particularly for our lady viewers and listeners, it's super important, and we should honour that.
Are we
Closing
done?
thoughts?
Are
Yeah,
we
no.
needing more
I mean, I wasn't
finishing
expecting that to
thoughts?
be like a mic drop. I just thought I'd put my closing thought in just then. Feel free,
So
go ahead.
I'll say something, just one quick thing of what Cosmina brought up about, females and the changes that we go through monthly. Then you get even further along that journey where things change dramatically, even from that monthly change. And I, personally am going through that. And there is some real grief associated with that, some real confusion associated with that. And maybe it's less about resisting and being upset with that change and just embracing the fact that this is another normal yet emotionally challenging step in life that has to happen. And I need a cave even even more than usual at this point. But yeah, changes are happening. Better to embrace them than not.
Yeah, it's just again embracing the different seasons, not only yearly or monthly, but in our lives. Priorities change. I mean, I'm gone to menopause, and to be quite honest, I have a ball. I really enjoy it. I don't miss anything from the previous. I think it's brilliant. So I'm embracing it full-heartedly. It has a lot of advantages. So yeah, I think it's a little bit just being okay with the cycle of life. There's no people look for meaning. There's no meaning. It's just what it is. We get born, we have the energy of youth, we get more settled, bit in the middle, then we become an old wise person, hopefully, or maybe not. But it's just part of life. And that's what it is. And I think just to be okay with it for me just helps. I just embrace every single phase. I see every phase as an adventure. What's coming now? And that's the change again, isn't it? Seeing the change as adventure and what do I learn now in this period of my life?
And just as an add-on to what you were saying, Abby, but I feel that suffering comes when we cling to things staying as they are, and everything around us is teaching us, and even our own bodies is teaching us that nothing stays the same. And like we go through these phases and transitions, and the more we simply embrace them, as you said, and flow with life rather than trying to be stagnant and cling to a rock and no, I'm going to stay here. I like it here. And just allowing ourselves to just flow and see where it takes us and embracing this journey fully, wholeheartedly, like the more like at peace and thriving we will be as well.
Yeah, there's some with that, like like you're grasping, you don't want to let go, right? You want to hold on to it if with going with it and allowing yourself to go with the current of, say, a river, right, is much easier than trying to cling on to a rock and all the energy spent trying to cling on and not go through. But if you really look, is it a waterfall? Like, do I really need to cling on so hard? Or can I just go for a little bit of a ride, let go, and allow myself to be taken on a journey on this path or whatever it is for the individual and whatever that situation may be is yeah, there's something a lot of wasted energy if you're going to cling to something and we may not know that we're clinging to it, right? So there's something for our own awareness that, again, awareness is is big, is big. So have a great holiday. And how are you moving through it? What's the new year gonna bring for you? I love the comments. Drop some stuff in the comments. And if I'm not answering you, yell at me. Don't be shy. It's all good.
Thank you. We will be back with another episode to see you through New Year. And as we said in a previous episode, all of our contact details are in the comments in the channel. We'll add Cosminas, and you'll be able to get in touch with any of us for anything that we can help you with. See you on the next one.
Happy Christmas, everyone.